you how to use steel rule dies in your Sizzix Big Shot machine. Now when I say a steel rule die, I'm actually referring to the cutting blades themselves, which are made out of steel. There's various sizes of Sizzix dies that are steel rule dies, so I use that term universally, but you'd be looking for dies that are called things like originals. This would be an originals size die, and that's just a little bit smaller than a Bigz size die. This would be considered a Bigz, and that's even smaller than, say, a Bigz XL size die, which are these long ones. But all of these have something in common, which is that they are considered a steel rule die. And what you're looking for in the store is anything that's a thick Sizzix die like this, and those are going to have the steel in them. They might come in different colors. For instance, anything from the Tim Holtz line is going to have this brown color backing, but you see it's still that same thickness. You might go back and find some dies from earlier times with Sizzix that even have maybe a red or a yellow plastic casing, but again, they have that steel inside. The sandwich for a steel rule die, and you have to get used to that term, a Sizzix sandwich. And what that means always is that you've got cutting plates that are your bread right on top of, surrounding whatever die you're using, and the material goes over the die. And that right there makes your sandwich. Now, when you're using a steel rule die, which is what all of these dies here are, then your sandwich is just your die, your material, let's say we're going to use some paper, and then your other cutting plate over the top, make a sandwich and run it through your machine. You do not need a platform for any of these steel rule dies because they are actually the exact height that is required with two cutting plates to go right through your Big Shot machine. Okay, let's do it. I'll turn it this way so it's easier for me. And we'll just use the die. You know what? No, let's do the clearlet. So this is kind of a fun steel rule die. It's a clearlet. It's actually a scalloped circle. And what I like about this die is that they've taken out the guts out of the middle and made it clear so that you can see right through it. So if you were going to say cut a picture or something, you'd be able to see exactly where you're cutting. But let's make our Sizzix sandwich. I always like to leave just a little bit of plate for the machine to grab, and then I'm going to run it through my Big Shot machine. Now, if this is your first time cutting something with the Big Shot, you're going to do what everybody does the first time they cut with the Big Shot. They're like, oh my goodness, it cut into my plate. That is what it's supposed to do. These are called cutting plates, and you will end up with little etched images of all your dies cut into these plates. And what you really want to do is you actually want to be rotating them. Use, this one underneath next time and this one on top. Maybe you're going to rotate it this way, you're going to flip it over. And eventually what your plates are going to look like is something more like this. You're not even going to be able to see through them anymore because they've been cut into so many times. They last a really long time, but they are consumable. Eventually these will break or wear out or get too warped to cut, consistently, and then you'll have to replace them. Okay, so you saw how we could cut very easily with our dies using paper or cardstock or any type of thin material like that. But did you know you can cut a variety of materials with steel rule dies? And we're going to have some fun playing with some of those materials now. But I did just want to point out that there's another type of steel rule die that I didn't really say anything about yet. And those are the magnetic movers and shapers. And those are a whole type of fun category, and they are deserving of their own video. So we'll set our movers and shapers aside for now. And we'll stick with our fun materials using our steel rule dies. Now, a good rule of thumb when you're deciding what you can cut with a steel rule die is if you can cut it with a pair of scissors, then you can cut the material with your die. So for instance, this little steel mesh here cuts easily with scissors. And so then, as you see, it was actually just as easy to cut it with my steel rule die. Some of the materials that I've already cut here using one of the steel rule dies were some thin metal sheet. I've done shrink plastic. This is matte board, that metal mesh. There's some felt, and this is actually self-adhesive magnet sheet. So you can cut a variety of materials. And a few I haven't tried yet are some fabric. Here is some wood. This is fun foam. And then here's some grunge paper. So let me take my Flower Layers number 9 die is the one I was using. That's from Eileen Hull's collection. And let's try the wood. We'll put the wood over that big, well no, it doesn't look like it fits. Let's do the medium die. And we'll make a sandwich with the cutting plates, leave a little bit for the machine to grab, and then we'll just roll it right through the Big Shot machine. And you'll see how easily it cut through that wood. Just like that. Isn't that cool? And then of course I could cut these other materials the same way. Now, when you're doing paper or cardstock, you will actually be able to cut multiples at the same time. And it sort of depends on the thickness of your material, but you can easily do about 4. Just judge that you can do about 4 at any time on your steel rule die. So this is really just a sampling of all the fun materials that you can cut with steel rule dies. Okay, let's talk about just a couple of accessories. Now, I've been using the plates that came with my Sizzix Big Shot machine, and they are the standard size cutting plate. And like I say, they will eventually get very worn out and used. With these plates, you'll be able to cut really any die up to the size of the plate. So you can do small ones like the on the edge dies, up to, you know, through your Bigz dies will fit on there, your originals, and then all the way up to a Bigz L. And that's pretty much the size of the plate is a Bigz L. So you won't be able to go any bigger than this with the plates that come with the machine. When you go to do Bigz XL dies, which are the long ones like this, then you're gonna have to buy yourself a set of extended cutting plates. And they look like this. And they're just like the short ones, they're just longer. And they're meant to go with the Bigz XL size dies. So one more accessory that I want to talk about is a crease pad. And this is actually just an optional addition, and the only time you need it is if you're doing a die like this little pop-up die here that has some creases, because the machine will actually also make creases. Some of the dies have crease rules in them. And if you find that those creases are cutting through, if you're using your 2 regular cutting plates, then you would replace the top cutting plate with a crease pad, and that will reduce that pressure and it'll make those creases not cut through your paper. But this is only required if you have that problem. Most of the time I have never even needed to use it, but it is a good thing to have on hand if you have dies that have creases in them. Well, hopefully I've inspired you to maybe add some new steel rule dies to your collection and get busy crafting with your Big Shot.